Hey guys, GhazzyTV here with another YouTube video build guide, and this time we're going to show a high budget version of my Animate weapon build guide. A link to the lower budget will be in the description below, as well as a link to the forum thread for the lower budget build guide. So this is one out of very many different ways you can play a high budget version of this build. I've gone with a little bit more defensive style over an offensive style where you would use a lot of extra gem levels for your Animate weapons. So my Animate weapons are currently only level 31. You can bring them up to 35 if you so wish. I've been farming some tier 17 up to level, well, I did farm tier 18 as well. Didn't touch tier 19, but there's not that much of a difference between tier 18 and 19 maps. So that's been pretty chill. With that in mind, I'm going to go through the gear real quick. I'm going to show you a map. In this case, we're going to do the Purifier Elder map, and then I'm also going to do a service run for an not Uber Elder, but a Sirus kill, just to show you the ability of it. This build has a little bit worse clearing than the cheaper version, as I've decided to be a little bit more defensively oriented, actually using a cluster jewel, which I'll talk about, and we're not using ranged animate weapons for this. Instead, we're having a cyclone approach. Now, there are ways you can make this build even tankier, and there are ways you can make this build do even more damage. One of the biggest application of extra damage comes from Bottle Faith, which is very, very expensive. Other than that, it's just a standard approach of having 2 levels from your amulet. The chest piece is defensively oriented with reduced mana reservation through a Sack of Walls Nest, allowing me to run the Dread Banner, Blood and Sand, and as well as with the Avian together with Pride. The POV will of course be linked in the description below. I didn't have a suffix open for another endurance charge on both of my rings because I needed the resistances. I actually stacked up a bit of Chaos Rest on this version, again to be a little bit more defensive. Didn't get minion damage on the gloves. That's also another upgrade for higher budget version. You can do non-corrupted cold iron points, couple of chaos worth, standard helmet with plus level minion gems with life and rest, with flesh offering enchant. And that's basically it. It's very straightforward, very simple, very chill. I have 45 pair of boots with a cyclone so that I can get that sorted as well. So I'm going to show you how a map would look with this type of build, despite the lack of clear speed, and then I'll obviously show you the other approach. I did have an Animate Guardian with Kingmaker and whatnot and Mask of the Stitch Demon. However, he decided he didn't want to live. So that was pretty sad. I watched a very expensive Animate Guardian die in a tier 18 map with Delirium, 2 Delirium orbs on it. So they don't actually survive the big boy Delirium encounters there. For the most part, the build is pretty straightforward. I will just be cycloning into packs and convocating. Not the fastest clearing, but then again, it's not really designed to be clear speed oriented. Build's been very chill. Performs equally to the low budget style, just does a fuckload more damage. And on top of that, it has the availability of going in with even more defensive nodes if you want to, or defensive designs, as well as more offense. It all depends on how you want to invest your currency and what you want the build to do. I didn't feel like going more damage was needed, considering the fact that this build is already doing an absurd amount of damage, which the POV is miscalculating for those of you who wants to know the numbers. So I actually cannot verify any exact numbers this build is actually delivering, because of the fact that it's not calculated as it should be. So with that in mind, all I can say is the build is doing a fuckload of damage, and that's about it. I'm not going to bother clearing all the map to minimize the time spent on this video. So instead, I'm just going to clear all the way to the boss, kill it, and then we're going to do Sirus as well. I'm going to talk about the skill tree and the decisions behind the cluster jewels, which is honestly the only thing that separates this build, plus the amulet of course, compared to the lower budget version. And I also want to make sure that people know that you can do this with a lower budget version as well. There's very little difference, but you can get a bit more defensive nodes with the same amount of damage if you go with something like the low budget version. This version is actually not using increased duration on the tree, which obviously means that the duration of your weapons will be a bit shorter than the lower budget version that I have. These ones have 88-second duration, whereas my low budget version has 104.4 if I'm not mistaken. And that's about it. Other than that, the build is pretty straightforward. Basically, boss like this, you pop your Bottle of Faith just before he pops, and then he's going to be gone, and next phase. This one can actually be in a risk of doing some damage to me, because sometimes he doesn't attack despite being in the transition form for the next phase. So we're going to invite him and do that. And then we have Culling Strike. Since I had that on my approach with the Animate Guardian before. I removed him since he died and put the Cutting Strike on the Golem. So I'm going to do an Awakener and see how that works. Alright, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's a fun build to play, I've been having a lot of fun with it. So whilst you wait for the RP to happen, the links are simple. Second wind dash with Convocation, to get the second wind for the cooldown recovery, of course. And the other 3 link is Cutting Strike, Feeding Frenzy for the Golem. Before I had a Kingmaker, Animate Guardian instead, so I never needed to link anything with Cutting Strike, but you know, he died, so I did that instead. The other links with the Cyclone is Cyclone, Desecrate, Castle Channeling with Flesh Offering in a 45 pair of boots, life and movement speed. The other links here is Bladefall with Unleash, and then I have Maim together with my Flesh and Stone to amplify the Maim effect when I'm close to the enemies. The helmet I've separated to have 2 links. One is Erase Spectre Blood Magic. The Spectres being used is 3 Spectres because the helmet gives plus level minion gems. There is a risk that they sometimes die anyways due to despite this on Delirium encounters. You could get something like this on an Elder helmet with minion life to keep them alive better, and then also have your Animate Guardian in here. The Spectres I'm using is one Host Chieftain from Ashen Fields, so where I pick my Spectres up. They generate power charges, and then I have 2 Carnage Chieftains, both generates frenzy charges for my minions and myself. I got Pride and then Molten Shell, which I use every now and then, but I don't use the normal one, I only use the Vol version. And then obviously the links is a Melee Fist, which I changed for Awaken Melee Splash, which is very cheap for clearing. Animate Weapon with Impale, Multi-Strike, Brutality, as well as minion damage, and that's generally it. So after this fight I will show you the cluster jewels I'm using for this build. It's very straightforward, and it's very similar to the approach of the low body version. So if you're playing the low body version, it's very easy to transition into this by simply just throwing a lot of currency onto the build. Then again, it's not really needed. So this is basically how you do the fight. Run around him. If he does the quad beam, if you want to keep your Spectres alive, then simply use your Convocation on the other side to keep them alive to some degree. And then between phases, I usually just summon new weapons to not care about the duration of them. It's pretty straightforward. You need to cast 2 Unleash Blade Falls with 2 Enduring Mana Flask to get full army back up. So that's what I do, and then we're going to go back into the fight. And that's how you do Sirus. And since you're using Cyclone, it's very easy to simply just spin around him. And all you need to care for is these balls that you saw here on the ground. That's all you really need to care about, because they can actually kill you pretty easily. See, I lost a couple of weapons. That happens in that situation. Quad beam, Convocate behind them. And you see my Spectres are dying here. That usually happens in Awakener fights. You don't really need them to kill the boss really fast. So it's not a big deal in the end. So get my weapons back up. Move the mini-map away. And we're going back in. And that's about it. And resummoning the Spectres in this type of fight is really not needed. You can completely ignore that, since we simply do not need them. And that would be that phase. Convocate on the side, and this phase will be over. Great. Resummoning weapons again to not care about the duration. The only problem that can occur is if you're not paying attention to your weapons, they can die. And if they die, it can be a bit annoying in the last phase. And that's really it. Oops, I'll go in there. And that's it. It's it. It's very simple. It's straightforward. It's an easy build to play. Same thing here. Pop my shit. And then with Cyclone, you can just dodge the abilities very simple by just moving a little bit on the sides. I think he was up here. No, he wasn't. I was wrong. Ooh. Ooh. Look at that, almost dying here. Holy shit. No flasks. Incredible. Absolutely astonishing. Almost died. And then he's dead. Oh, come on, dude. Just die. Ooh, that was tight. There we go. You can loot now, sir. There we go. Very simple. So I'm going to show you the POB. This is the wrong POB. Let's see, where is it? Am I blind? I am blind. Is it this one? Oh, there it is. Jesus Christ. Getting all blind here. So the tree is very simple. It looks pretty much identical to the low budget approach. You just go out, get life, get enduring bond, and when you're leveling with it, I would recommend going for duration nodes such as potency of will or exceptional performance. And then other than that, just straightforward with the tree. I'm not bothering Death Attunement because we're leveling up the Spectres. We get that through there. And if you look at the Anointment, I got Crystal Skin, and that's very simple for this specific approach. We're oiling this one, and that's because we have gear such as our helmet crafted with 25% chance to avoid elemental ailments. And we have that on our gloves, that's 50%. The Crystal Skin gives us 15, so that's 65%. And then we're specking having a small jewel with Elegant Form. So we have 65% plus 30, that's 95%. And the way we did it with this, thanks to one of my subscribers called Viandante, who presented this idea for me. It's actually really good. We're getting the remaining avoiding chance from the rest of our jewels. So in this case, we have Avoid Being Ignited here. We have a jewel here with, where is it? I'll show you here. I got a Avoid Being Shocked in my belt, for example. I got a jewel here with it Avoid Being Ignited, and then we have, where the hell is it? Am I blind? I am blind. There it is. Avoid Being Chilled and Frozen from here. So we're completely immune to elemental ailments, which would then allow us to run things like staunching on our life flask. Dousing is not doing anything, and I can have an iron skin for physical damage mitigation on my flask instead, and then warding on the Quicksilver, for example, and that allows me to be immune to dousing, shocking, and ignite, shock, and freeze effects. I don't have to use any flasks for that. So the big jewels for this is basically the large cluster jewel. This is where the currency really goes up, because the amulet, yeah, you can craft that, it's not too expensive, but for a high budget state, the cost really comes down to the cluster jewels. So in this case, we're using a large cluster with 8 or 9 passive skills with increased minion damage, and the big nodes is obviously using Rotten Claws and Feasting Fiends to give your minions leech, meaning you don't really need that extra leech node if you don't want to. And then I'm using Primordial Bond, and this is to further scale the effect of our Carrion Golem, because our Carrion Golem in this specific combination is level 30, gives a lot of flat added physical damage to my minions, and we're emphasizing that further by scaling it up with this effect. You can also spec into Golem Commander if you want to, or even an Intuitive Leap to reach it to spend less points. But we're using Primordial Bond because it gives you a lot of damage. And then we have Precise Commander together with Master of Command on 2 medium cluster jewels. What these does, gives your minions, because they're not counted as party members, they're counted as allies, which party members are counted as well, giving them increased critical strike multiplier or small critical strike chance, which is very, very strong for their damage applications. And then we have 2 nodes of Master of Command, which reduces the mana reservation of your banner skills, which allows us, together with a sackable chest piece, to have the avian skill included as well. So that's basically how we designed both medium clusters, which is a 4. You could use a 5 passive skill tree for this as well, with increased effect and non-curse auras from your skills. And these tools can be a bit expensive, shouldn't be too expensive now with the nerfs coming up to Herald stacking and aura stacking. And then the small cluster, as I mentioned before, they have to be 2 passive to waste as little points as possible. To get Elegant Form, you need to get one with % chance to dodge attack skills to get the Elegant Form one. And then you have to use a armor one to get the Enduring Composure. And the Enduring Composure is giving you endurance charge every second if you've been hit recently. So every time you've been hit, you're then going to generate endurance charges that will further improve your physical damage mitigation. So if we look at the approach of endurance charges, with this specific build, we're having about 73% physical damage mitigation going to this tree. You can amplify that even further if you want to further push the defensive stats of the build if you'd like. This is just one out of many ways you can do this build. And as mentioned, I will put this PUB in the description below, as well as a link to the low budget version. And that's about it. And I will add this to the build guide thread as well. So make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe for more content now that my channel is public. YouTube is still working on my channel, still a lot of things to be fixed, but it's public, so feel free to subscribe and help me out that way. And hit me up in the comments below what you guys think about the idea of having me showcasing higher budget versions of my low budget builds. It's something I've been trying out to do lately, so let me know what you guys feel about it. Until next time, boys, stay safe and keep rocking.